Alright guys, in this video I'm going to talk about bank runs because that's what's happening now in Canada. The first little hint of people starting to panic a little bit, to scramble to get control of their own money, because the Canadian banks have started freezing the accounts of people that aren't going along with their narrative. They've decided to make a donation to a peaceful group of people deciding to protest in Ottawa against the tyrannical outstretch of power by our own government. So now anyone who's made a decision to donate to these people is at threat of having their own bank account frozen and denied access to their own money. Their credit cards are being cut off. And now people are scrambling to get their money out of the bank, because if you have cash in hand, then they can't do that. They can't refuse you access to that money because you already have it. So what a bank run is when a large amount of people start trying to withdraw their money all at once. And the issue with that is that here in Canada, the major banks are holding less than 1% of depositors' money in cash. So historically, the bank used to hold 50% or more of depositors' money in cash. That was a good bank, because that, if all of a sudden people decided they wanted the cash, the banks had the cash to give them. And now what's happened is they've gotten everyone so used to using digital forms of payment that now the banks don't actually have the cash, and they're holding less than 1% of depositors' money in cash. And so what happens is, if all of a sudden for some reason people start to want the cash, to have the cash in hand so that they have control of that, and that these centralized establishments can't just come in and deny you access to your own money, now people are scrambling and they're going, okay, I want to pull out my cash because I want to have access to it. So this is what's happening in Canada. And just the other day, I think it was 2 days ago, five of the five largest banks in Canada all had outages for over an hour. All at the same time. They all went down and people couldn't access their online banking and whatever. All at the same time, everyone's scrambling to pull out cash, and myself included. I went to try and pull out cash and they told me it would be 3 months to get the cash. So this is the kind of stuff we're seeing, where I just asked for, not even all of my cash, just a percentage of my cash I wanted. And all of a sudden now I'm being questioned and interrogated as to why I want the cash. And now they've sent me 5 pages of forms that they want me to fill out. And they told me that if I don't have these forms filled out by the end of the week, they're going to close my account. And I've had this account with this bank for 37 years. So this is the kind of stuff we're seeing, this madness where it's quite evident where this is going. And they really don't have the cash. And so if people start to panic and start to decide they want their money and they go to ask for it, what could happen is what's called a bank run, where all of a sudden the banks don't actually have the cash. And if too many people ask for the cash and they don't have it, the bank could actually go insolvent and they can go under. And this is what we saw in other countries like Zimbabwe. This happened recently. And what happens is there's a loss of confidence and people go to get their money so that they have the money on hand. And all of a sudden there was lineups for 2 days down the street. It took you 2 days to get to the ATM, and the government came in and said, because of this, unprecedented situation, you're only allowed to pull out $100 a day. So can you imagine that? You have $100,000 or whatever you have in your bank account, and you go to access it, and they tell you, no, you can't access your own money. And so now you're only allowed a certain amount a day, or whatever they decide they're going to do. So this is what's coming. And if you don't have the control of your own money, then you're at risk of that. And even right now, if you think you're not at risk because you're going along with everything you're being told and you're a good little citizen, there's going to come a point where you don't do the right thing one day, and all of a sudden you're cut off and you're deemed to be an enemy, and now you're at risk of the same thing. So even though you might be safe now, it's still important that we all are aware of the way this is going, and we all take action to make sure that we have other options in place in case this happens to us. So Some of the ways are, like I've been talking about in previous videos, are cash in hand, cash outside of the bank that you can access at any point, precious metals, you know, coinage, minted gold and silver coins. Bitcoin is another great way. And so by diversifying and having these assets, these forms of money in hand, now it doesn't matter if they close your bank account because you have some cash. So at least you have some. Maybe, you know, you don't have to do it with all of it, but to have some that is within your control, something that you have access to in the event of something like this, it doesn't hurt. And I think it's you know, I highly recommend it. And that's why I've been, you know, preaching this to people for a while. So that's what's happening, guys. Crazy times, bank runs in Canada. The Canadian banks are actually the third most likely in the world right now to have a bank run because they are holding so little cash and we're so over leveraged. Everything right now in Canada is dependent on debt and more debt, and just no one actually has the cash. If you look at the charts, very few people actually have cash in Canada. Everyone's using debt. And so this leaves our entire banking system in a very vulnerable situation. And the whole thing could collapse tomorrow. Like it has happened in other countries. We've seen it. And so, you know, take some action, diversify, don't hold all of your eggs in one basket, and don't trust these centralized establishments, because the more centralized they become, the more corrupt they become, and the more vulnerable they become to black swan events. Nature likes to be diversified and unique and be varied in its forms of expression. And when we centralize things and we're all going along with one way of being, then we are more at risk of some unforeseen event that all of a sudden puts that way that we're operating at risk. So that's why I'm such a big fan of decentralization and being diversified and having multiple ways that we approach life and unique ways that we look at things. And we're not all just going along with one collective way of thinking and being and relying on one centralized government, one centralized bank, one centralized health authority, one centralized corporation that controls all our food. So this is the way it's going. I don't think it'll last. I think it all collapses in the end. But in the meantime, I think it's important that we embrace decentralization and get our economic resources out of the hands of these greedy, centralized bodies. So that's all I have to say about that. You guys stay safe out there and have a fantastic day.